Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Mont, and this is my review of Game of Thrones Season 8, the final season. This video will have spoilers throughout, so if you're not caught up on Game of Thrones and just want to know what I thought of the last season, it went about the way I expected it to for the most part. Although it was not as large as a disappointment as previous series in some aspects. But, spoiler warning for the rest of this video. So if you care about spoilers, go! Still here? Alright then. Essentially, we have a two-pronged threat in this final season of Game of Thrones. At this point, Cersei is firmly established as a bad guy. Despite large quantities of the show focusing on her, she is portrayed effectively in the same light as the Night King, who is this mysterious alien threat to all life in Westeros, or if not the entire planet, having smashed down the wall at the end of the last season. Now, his conquest begins. And this is where my first issue with this season arises. Westeros is full of famous castles, strongholds and keeps, two of which are generally considered impregnable by the general population, Storm's End and the Eyrie. So why is the big battle happening at Winterfell? It's not a weak castle, certainly, but it's probably not even in the top 5 castles a commander would choose to hole up in. The only possibility I could think of was, well, the further south the Army of the Dead marches, the larger they will become as they kill everyone on their way, right? But that was never mentioned, and the north is so sparsely populated that it wouldn't be feasible anyway. Now look, I know this is going to sound bizarre, but imagine you wanted to genocide a large country. Where would you aim your nukes? At the capital cities, obviously. Scouring tiny pockets of settlements spread throughout a huge expanse of land would take an unholy amount of time. And in this case, assuming they didn't take everyone south with them, it would give them time to prepare. And we also know that the Night King's primary goal at that moment is getting Bran so he can wipe his hard drive. And remember, the north of Westeros is as large as the other 6 kingdoms combined, or thereabouts. So if the Army of the Dead is going around every tiny settlement to kill people whilst gradually moving south, that would give the Army of the Living a year, 2 years. It would give them so much time to prepare. So why didn't they just take their forces and shore up in Storm's End or the Eyrie? You know, the only way into the seat of House Arryn, either by a lift and pulley system. That wouldn't be working though, obviously, so all of the Army of the Dead would be having to climb what is effectively a giant stone ladder that is really massive. They would be climbing it so long that the Snake Eater theme would be playing and loop at least 4 or 5 times. 100 men could defend that castle until they collapse from exhaustion, unable to fight. All you need to do is stand at the top of the ladder and smack anything that manages to get up that high. Good luck getting up that high when they're raining rocks, arrows, oil, fire, and everything. Poo! Maybe they're throwing frozen poo at you when they run out of arrows. You don't know. The only threat would be the Night King himself on his dragon, which he wouldn't have at all if they hadn't gone up past the wall in the first place, but that's besides the point. You have, effectively, an impassable gateway, leaving 99% of your army free to shoot arrows at the undead dragon, as well as 2 alive dragons to help you fight it. Now, there is one good point I could think of as for why you wouldn't go up there. In the books, they had to basically abandon the Eyrie and go down because during winter it got so cold up there that you wouldn't really want to be living in there, which is a good point, yes, and you're also very easily to get sieged so that you have no food. That same point applies to Winterfell in the case of an extended siege. Also, sure, it's going to be cold up there, but when you have your entire army in there and you're lighting fires and you have all that body heat, it's still a better situation. It's not like it becomes so cold that it's utterly uninhabitable. It's just, a preference. It's like, well, it's cold here, so we're going to go somewhere else. It's not We cannot physically stay here because if we do, we will freeze instantly and die. You have an army in there sharing body heat, all lighting fires in the hearths, it would be fine. See, if you had the army of the living shored up there, then you would need to bring in ice spiders that can, climb up that high or some other way to get at them. But no, they decided they have to fight at Winterfell because the logic didn't play into the decision. It was solely people know what Winterfell is. The show started there. It's like poetry. It rhymes. We've come full circle. It's so cool. Only it's not cool. It's stupid. And it makes the characters look like idiots. When you're in a siege, when you have a castle and people are coming to attack that castle, why would you put your army outside the castle for no reason? They had a huge force of mounted archers, the Dothraki. Do you know what the Dothraki bows are? They outrange Westerosi bows. How did they use the Dothraki? Do a head-on charge on a cloudy night in pitch blackness. What? If the Dothraki were that stupid, they wouldn't have ever been a threat to anyone in the first place. Walking a horse at night is just asking to have it break a leg, let alone a full-on charge. So instead of having them use their Dothraki to harangue the army of the dead whilst it marched, flanking them, peppering them with arrows whilst they cannot possibly fight back because they are all on foot, with the exception of the White Walkers who number like a dozen. Instead of doing that, riding your horses around, shooting arrows at them from a distance to, harass them, they just throw them away because the writers on this show are geniuses. They have galaxy brains so immense we cannot even comprehend their sort of high IQ level thinking. They're not playing like 4D chess or 5D chess, they're playing 8-dimensional chess at this point. The other alternative is that all the characters in this show are rocking a collective intellect that's about equivalent to a bowl of diced mango. Considering Arya thought Sansa was the smartest person she ever met. Yeah. No. But onto the actual episode. The first 2 episodes were largely full of character moments. They had an echo of the Season 1 Episode 1 arrival of King Robert at Winterfell, only this time it's Dany arriving with Jon. I thought it was odd to devote 2 episodes out of 6 to kind of nothing. Don't get me wrong, I love character moments, I love character development, when it goes somewhere, when it has a meaning and a purpose. When you have only 6 episodes and all of this stuff to wrap up, you can't devote all this time to nothing. It also killed the sense of urgency, to be honest, but there were some nice character moments, seeing people interact and meet again after years. I think I'm in the minority who liked the dragon riding sequence, until my friend told me it was apparently ripped straight out of the How to Train Your Dragon movie. Which doesn't surprise me, seeing as the ending of Season 7 was ripped straight out of Wrath of the Lich King. Only that actually had more of a sense of urgency, and Arthur's wasn't a complete bitch like the Night King. I liked most of the scenes with Brienne and Jaime. Brienne. I'm sorry, I'm used to saying Brienne, but I think they say it Brienne on the show. Then again, how can we take the show's pronunciation properly when most of the characters say, like, Missandei, but then the writers say Missandei? There's no consistency there either, so I don't feel bad at all. But yes, I liked most of Brienne and Jaime's interactions. It was nice to have a reminder that Brienne is a human being, because for probably the last 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons, she's been nothing but I'm a smug anime character. Same with Arya, showing no vulnerability because the writers think that's what a strong character is. Someone who is just a stone and goes like, heh, teleports behind you, nothing personal, kid. Survives a fight against 50 other characters at the same time because their Super Saiyan powers are so big. So it was nice to see her smile, to see her emotional, nice to be reminded she is a human and has emotions. I don't know about you, but when a character is backflipping through zombies and carving them up, I don't really give a shit. When they are being shown as human and vulnerable, realistically in danger in this situation, that's when I care more about them. These early episodes, they made me like and care about Dany, something I've not done since season 2, maybe? She's been waltzing through the show for years, just having people bend over backwards to hand her armies on a silver platter. She's been in no danger anywhere, because where other characters would have realistic consequences for their short-sightedness or their misgivings or their mistakes, Dany has had none of that. She's made all these mistakes and it hasn't meant anything. So yeah, it was nice to see her in danger. It made me go, oh, I hope she survives. I hope she manages to pull through here, because I don't know what's going to happen. As for the big battle, the Night King's conquest, which lasted like about 4 hours, my issues with that episode were primarily with the beginning and the end. Everything leading up to the climax I thought was pretty good. That long sequence with no dialogue, just music as the Night King was slowly, inexorably making his way towards Brandon Stark. I enjoyed that a lot. It's cliche to say edge of the seat, but I was on the edge of my seat. It was a tense moment. I was like, oh, what's going to happen? I thought it was done well. It just died to death when Arya teleported behind the Night King and demonstrated how good her training at the Sonic Academy was. A lot of people are wrongfully assuming you're just mad Arya killed the Night King instead of Jon, which isn't the case. It was unexpected, sure. From a narrative perspective, it wasn't satisfying, but no, the issue I have with it is the execution of it, because again, if you can stealth past the White Walkers, why are you fighting them? Why didn't they just send Arya to go infiltrate the army of the dead and poke the Night King? They pulled the camera out immediately after she shanked him. The area was completely encircled. There is no feasible way for her to just pop out of thin air. If she's trying to be stealthy, why was she flying through the air and screaming? So you have two situations. She either impossibly managed to get through the Ring of Undead, or she is so good at sneaking that she's able to do that. And if that is the case, why didn't she do it when they were marching there and avoid the entire battle? It's not like Arya has ever doubted her abilities in these last few seasons. She's been like teleporting behind everyone. She knows how overpowered she is, so why didn't she do anything? What is this writing? It would have been less ridiculous if Bran had revealed that Gendry had outfitted his wheelchair with a rapid-fire repeating crossbow and he unloaded 20 obsidian bolts into the Night King as he approached. And yes, as far as character goes, Arya was a stupid choice from the perspective of a writer. She had no connection with anything really in this plotline, even though she's saving her brother in her home. The show has been so obsessed with making things for good television, you'd think that they would at least follow one thread through. Theon dying and perhaps killing the Night King would have been better, considering the location was Winterfell and he would have been dying for Bran, to mirror his actions in Season 2, wherein he killed Bran. Jaime living up to his Kingslayer moniker and delivering the blow would have been nice, or perhaps even Jon, yes, who was the character with the most personal connection with the Night King, along with Bran. But I guess those are all male characters, so we couldn't let them do it because that would be sexist, I guess? Well, yes, you could even bring in Brienne, who would be a random choice, but at least it would let you have a line wherein Jaime remarks that they are both Kingslayers now. When Arya does it, it doesn't ultimately mean anything because it gets forgotten in the next episode. It has no ramifications, it has no implications, it has no consequences. It was just a way to delete that plotline and that character. Conveniently. Either way, who did it doesn't matter at the end of the day, compared to how it was done. Just having someone conveniently teleport the Night King to insta-kill him, it was stupid. The whole premise of, if we kill him, we win, was such a movie Hollywood cliche. I didn't like it either, frankly. I know people will point out, well, that's why we had the 5-minute segment of Arya stealthing. But what did that prove? That she can hide behind bookshelves? It's a bit of a leap going from that to somehow breaking through a ring of White Walkers. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. There is no logical reasoning behind it, and no one's going to convince me otherwise, especially not the writers of the show who are like, figure it out for yourself, or Dany forgot about the Iron Fleet. They don't know what they're doing. What would you expect from the writers of X-Men Origins Wolverine? In general, I think it was a mistake to have the Night King stuff before King's Landing at all, as it deflates the show in a very obvious way. One episode later, everyone's forgotten about the threat to the living world, this fantastical alien army coming to destroy us all. It's back to, Cersei has my chair, we must slap her. It's unusual, to say the least. Either way, we then have things start falling to pieces where they should be falling into place. Jaime abandons Brienne and all of his development throughout 7 seasons. Again, he goes back to Cersei. The writers are probably thinking to themselves, dude, it's like an addiction, like, it's so hard to break it, like, and yeah, it like he's so weak at the end of the day, it's like poetry, you know? And then he goes back to Cersei. It's not interesting. Jaime's arc in the books is interesting. Him reading from the White Book, deciding that he is the one who controls the ending to his story. That is a lot more compelling than, I must go back to Cersei because I like her again. Plus, he just hears about her. Now, if they got to King's Landing and he was there to fight, if he saw her stumbling through King's Landing, scared, frightened, vulnerable, as it's being destroyed, and he had a last-minute change of heart for his sister, who he once loved, and upon seeing her, he decides that, no, he can't kill her. I would buy that a little more. But even then, it should have resulted in perhaps a mercy killing, him finding her to kill her, and at the last moment deciding to comfort her, knowing that they're both doomed anyway. Not with him actively trying to save her. That was stupid. It was abandoning character development for no reason. Even the actors seem to agree with this. You know what else was really stupid? In one episode, we have Drogon lighting up the Iron Fleet whilst they struggle to hit a fast-moving flying target, because you know, realistically, it is very hard to hit something flying through the air. You go back to World War I, World War II. Why do you think most of the important stuff was done in the air? Because, spoilers, if you're on the ground, it's hard to hit something in the air. So I'm fine with Drogon blowing up the Iron Fleet. But then we rewind 30 minutes and we have them landing 3 for 3 shots, 100% accuracy on Rhaegal because the plot demands it. It's not just they shot him whilst he was flying in the air, they were moving too. I'm assuming the writers have never actually been on a boat before, because boats move around a lot. Mounting ballista to them, being able to hit a flying target, I can suspend my disbelief that there are dragons in this show. Don't bring up the stupid argument of, it's fantasy, suspend your disbelief. That is such a stupid argument, okay? It's about internal logic. In this show, dragons exist. Zombies exist. That is part of the universal laws of this show. It is fine. But you know what else exists in this show? Gravity, momentum, and water. Water moves when you are on water. Boats move when you are on water. If you are on a boat, you cannot realistically shoot something moving through the air at high speed. On top of all that, do you know where they are during this encounter? They are in Blackwater Bay. Now, I don't know 100% sure if Blackwater Bay always has sort of, you know, rough and violent waters, but at least at one point in the book, they describe that the waters in Blackwater Bay are rough and violent and churning. It might have just been during that particular weather, I don't know, but it's been established that Blackwater Bay is not some sort of calm lagoon where you can float in a serene manner. So no, you can't shoot a dragon with ballista whilst you're on a boat, and you can't do it with 100% accuracy. If they had shot 1,000,000 arrows, I know they're not arrows, they're bolts, whatever. If they had shot 1,000,000 of them, and 3 of them happened to hit, okay. But no, one hits, another one hits, the third one hits, and then all the rest, because once Rhaegal has been conveniently deleted from the budget, then Drogon conveniently is able to dodge the rest of them. But you know what? I can fix this. I thought about this plotline, or this occurrence, for 1 minute, and I came up with a solution that makes sense. When Daenerys first arrived at Dragonstone in Season 7, it was unoccupied. I noted that in my review of Season 7, because that was completely stupid. But whatever. She goes north. Cersei learns from her mistake. This time, she sets up an ambush at Dragonstone because she knows that when Daenerys comes back south, she's going to use Dragonstone as the seat of her army to assault King's Landing, because in the show they're right next to each other. So here's what they do. She sets up an ambush at Dragonstone. They hide the ballista up, like, on the castle. When Rhaegal lands, they attack him there. When he's landed, they are stationary, they are high up, they have a position to ambush a dragon that is landing, not flying through the air. The goal was to try and kill both dragons, but Rhaegal ends up landing first, whilst maybe Daenerys is still checking out the fleet, and maybe they're like, oh wait for her to land. But then Rhaegal's like, oh, I smell arrows, so they start firing, or they get nervous and they fire, you know? It gives you a reasonable way of taking him out, because at that point, you could pepper him with so many bolts that one of them goes through his eyeball into his brain and kills him, because that's how you kill dragons. They are covered in tough scales. But whatever. They killed off a dragon in a stupid way. In the very next episode, Dany flies right in. This time she's powerful enough to win, because don't worry about it. Turn your brain off. Game of Thrones has never been a show about sort of realistic sort of circumstances, or rather, should I say, realistic consequences in fantasy circumstance. Don't worry about it, dude. This is just like your Marvel movies. It doesn't matter. People will just show up and save the day. She caught them unawares, because they definitely wouldn't be expecting her to attack the fleet or the city. Right. Then we have the most controversial Mad Queen stuff that people lost their minds over. People saying this is out of character. They haven't been paying attention to Daenerys' character. Everything she has achieved, all of her feats are born from murder and slaughter. The most famous thing she is known for, birthing dragons, yeah, that was done by burning an old lady alive. Now, did Mira Muzdal deserve to be burned alive? You know, maybe. Mira Muzdal's logic, though, cannot really be faulted. Her logic was, well, I'm going to ensure that your husband, this warlord, dies, because that way, when he's dead, he's not going to slaughter any more people. He's not going to rape, pillage, and burn down settlements. You remember what Khal Drogo was saying in, like, episode 6? He was like, I will kill all these people. We will rape their women. We will annihilate them. You shouldn't be cheering for that. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, Mira Muzdal deserves it because she killed an unborn child. You know, that is a much better point, I will confess. That wasn't what Mira Muzdal originally did. She ensured that Khal Drogo's wounds festered, which eventually led to Daenerys, you know, wanting this blood magic ritual to cure him, which Mira Muzdal did. Then it was Jorah who led Daenerys into the tent. If she hadn't gone in there, I don't think Mira Muzdal would have just walked out and, like, stabbed her in the baby. But yes, killing Mira Muzdal wasn't really a moment to cheer for, in my opinion. It was revenge, but perhaps somewhat justified. But who are we to sort of, you know, judge who deserves life and death? You know, we can't really fairly do that as humans. But yes, Daenerys, in season 1, she burned people alive. She's crucified people. She's burned so many people. Everything she's done has been the result of murder. She caused immense civil unrest in a large area of Essos. Then she just upped and left, meaning the moment she left, there's nothing stopping the other slaver cities going back to slaving and conquering Marine, regardless of what they say. This is a problem with the show that a lot of people can't really grasp. There is a very good reason all of Dany's chapters in the books are entirely from her perspective. When you're in Westeros, you see things from the perspective of the Starks, the perspective of the Lannisters. It means you start to empathize with Jaime's situation. When it starts off, you're like, oh, this dude just pushed a kid out of a window. He is irredeemable. Once you start to see things from his perspective, it becomes less black and white. But with Dany's stuff, you never see anyone else's perspective. It is all from her perspective. She comes off as heroic because she is a teenager who is making what she believes is the right decision. So of course, from her perspective, everything is portrayed as heroic and brave. We never see her actions from the perspective of another, really. We only hear about it, slightly from other people trying to give her their opinions. Eventually, of course, we do get a bit of that with the Barristan chapters. Dany has always been in danger of treading this path. Remember her brother? Viserys didn't start off as a raving lunatic. He became that way due to circumstances, much like Daenerys. The show starts after he's been looking after her for 10 years or more. He's been forced to beg, demean himself, sell their mother's crown, do anything he can just to survive and make sure that he and his sister aren't killed, raped, and disposed of. He finally gets a ray of light and hope. If he marries his sister to the Dothraki, they will come and they will conquer Westeros, hopefully. Then they decide to march in the other direction for a year. Viserys going off the deep end is understandable, as it is with Daenerys. This is who they are. This is what Targaryens are. They walk the line of madness. She is a product of inbreeding, generation after generation of it. Just like her father, like all Targaryens, she straddles the line between greatness and madness. It doesn't take much to tip the scales. It reminds me when I was watching reaction videos of people, like audiences, viewers going, yeah, like cheering when she was burning people to death because they were the bad guys. Their crime was not bowing and bending the knee to her. Sorry, but that's the result of a lunatic, a tyrant. You don't burn a surrendered, defeated army to death. The Lannister army of conscripted soldiers, very evil, yeah, let's burn them all. Now she's burning to death civilians. I wonder if those people are still cheering, going, yeah, burn them all. If so, maybe they should stop and think about it. And really, it would make me worry about the morality of those people when they are cheering anyone being burned to death. Daenerys is a sociopath. She has been a sociopath for a very long time. She has gone through a traumatic upbringing, a traumatic life, with all these horrible things happening to her. Then she finds herself in a situation of considerable power. Yeah, it's upsetting. That said, I'm fine with Daenerys going Mad Queen. My issues here is the execution. It's a pretty big leap from being a nutter to going absolutely insane, rampaging throughout a city for what we can only assume was hours, burning everything and everyone. I'm fine with the Mad Queen plotline, just not how they executed it in the show. They sort of hinted at it, they teased it throughout all the seasons, but then suddenly it went from not 0 to 100, it went from say 0 to 20 in seasons 1 through 7, and then in one episode it went from 20 to 100 in one single moment. It should have been far more gradual. Likewise, I'm not really sure if the triggering of the final break being bells makes all that much sense. From what I understand, it's the bells go, the bell means stop attacking. but she doesn't want to stop. She's looking at the Red Keep, and she's so driven with fury at the prospect of not punishing these people who killed her dragon, who killed Missandei. She can't control that anger, so it just explodes out of her. I can buy that, but I can't buy that instead of going straight for the Red Keep, she just blows up the city. I don't know about everyone, but for me, if I get so angry that, say, like, I go, and like, I did it once. I was playing Gears of War one time. I got so angry, I went, and I threw my controller. It bounced off the floor, hit the cupboard, bounced off the cupboard, hit me in the toe, and I immediately felt as stupid as I was being in that moment. It was a momentary explosion of anger that couldn't really be controlled. Sure, we've all had those moments, but it usually passes, like, within seconds, and we go, that was stupid, and we, if not calm down, we stop at least being dumb. Daenerys kept going, and going, and going, and going, toasting the entire city. Here's what I would have done. She can't be on board with the prospect of letting them go, so she flies over to the Red Keep, and she burns one line of fire all the way up to the Red Keep. As she's doing this, her dragonfire ignites the wildfire that is in the city, and she notices this, and she gets like a look of horror. Everything else plays out the same, but it's because of the wildfire that she ignited. So she has a momentary burst of anger, which then leads to all this devastation and destruction. I think that would have been a lot better than her ignoring the Red Keep and just flying around for 20 minutes before going to burn it. Cleganebowl happened. I didn't like it, honestly. I know people have been conflicted saying Cleganebowl is stupid or I want Cleganebowl. Personally, I was down with Cleganebowl happening. I mean, I thought the memes were funny, but whatever. But I feel like Sandor's development was stunted and solely is a means for him to be like, look how messed up I am, Arya. Too late for me. The actual fight was too Hollywood, with all the armor just falling away and dramatic throwing around. I hate that in fights, like in Terminator Salvation, where Terminator was fighting John Connor, and instead of just pushing his metal fingers into his spine and killing him or crushing his head, he throws him around for 5 minutes. And that's what the Mountain was doing. That's what Ungreg was doing. Are they Terminators or are they cats playing with their prey? At least with Ungreg, yeah, maybe he is so sadistic that instead of just instantly killing Sandor, yeah, he wants to throw him around and play with him before he finally crushes his skull. I didn't like it. It felt like a bad Hollywood movie fight. I want Cleganebowl to happen, but I want Sandor Clegane to grow as a character. Even if he dies in the act of killing Greg, it should be more of a mercy killing. I think he should see what has happened to his brother and put him out of his misery. After all, the Hound is dead, and Sandor Clegane is at peace. Now, before we get into the final episode, a few closing thoughts on the bells. If Arya was planning to kill Cersei, why didn't she tell everyone? Like, hey guys, I was able to kill the Night King, I was able to teleport through his army and wipe him out. I can do the same thing for Cersei and save all these lives, and if Cersei dies, the city will surrender because there are no other commanding figures there. No reason not to. It was just stupid. Varys, why did he make it so easy and obvious for people to put him in the line of fire? He's meant to be smart. He's played all these kings, all these political figures. He wouldn't put himself in such a situation of danger as he did. Alright, how about that final episode? I'm not going to break it down scene by scene, so I'll just talk about the things I liked first, and then the things I disliked. I liked the shot of Dany with wings. I liked that Jon gave Ghost a pat. I liked the scene where Tyrion found his siblings. That was about it, honestly. I didn't much care for the rest of the episode. Now don't get me wrong, it could have been a lot worse. Largely I just found myself indifferent, not caring. You would think that a, 8-year journey, or however long this has been, would get more of an emotional reaction, but I just found myself ambivalent for the most part. I thought it was bizarre that Grey Worm was fine with slaughtering prisoners, but then when Jon did for Dany, they just imprisoned him and were like, whatever. I thought it was very bizarre that Sansa goes, oh, by the way, we're going to be independent in the north, and everyone else was like, sure, sounds good to me, along with a northern lord becoming our king. That was rushed and strange. I didn't like it, and ultimately it meant nothing beyond a small scene of Sansa getting a crown. So what was the point? Arya is going west of Westeros, so she will end up in Asshai, I suppose. Or realise the world is flat. Dun dun dun. I don't really know what to think of Drogon burning the throne. Was he just raging out and happened to burn it? Or was he galaxy-brained dragon who realised it was the throne that killed Dany, figuratively? I don't know. Dany's body was taken east, so maybe she'll get revived in Volantis by a Red Priest and come back in Game of Thrones 2, Electric Boogaloo. I didn't really like how everything felt so fan-servicey at the end. Now, of course, the most fan-servicey thing would have been, just Dany and Jon marrying and ruling happily, but if you take that out, you have Tyrion as hand and all these other characters on the small council, even though a lot of them aren't really qualified for it. They're just there because we know who they are as characters. Bronn as Master of Coin? No. Sam as Grand Maester? I mean, I could buy him doing that eventually after more studying and training, but not now, when he's basically still a novice. What was Davos, the Master of Ship or something? I mean, that would make sense in some capacity, though. As for Bran being king, sure. I don't really care. It was kind of cheesy, but I mean, Tyrion kind of had a point. It was always going to be challenged, but I feel like they just gave up near the end of making this show. Everything became bigger and more expensive and shinier and worse. I'm not just talking about the coffee cup or the water bottle that showed up. I mean, it's just Game of Thrones for you. Disappointing, ultimately. Still, I'll be curious to see where the books go. Perhaps I'll make some videos about those in the future if they ever come out. For now, thanks for listening, and of course share your thoughts down in the comments. As for what's next, I think they're doing a prequel thing for Game of Thrones, like set 3,000 years in the past, and an adaptation of his Dark Materials. I was a big fan of that when I was a kid. I even have a signed copy of Amber Spyglass sitting around here somewhere. Maybe that'll turn out good. And then we have the Witcher Netflix adaptation, which I think is meant to come out like end of the year. Not sure how I feel about that, but we shall see. Till then, you guys, take care. And I'm getting hay fever, so I'm all stuffy. Yay! Ciao.